Game series.
Book series.
Help wanted.
New book series.
Oh, come on. Fine. Phone guy.
Phone dude.
Purple guy.
Orange dude.
Didn't you just... Fine. Wild card. Change the category. Timeline.
Bite of 87.
Chomp of 83.
Party of 85.
Wait, but...
Time traveling ball pit.
You can't just...
Reverse.
Oh, yeah? Reverse.
Reverse.
Reverse. Reverse.
Reverse.
Reverse. Reverse. Reverse.
Reverse.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory! Another day, another installment in the FNAF multimedia conglomerate. So, at this point, some people in the FNAF community really hate my guts. Like, ring me through a meat grinder and feed me to a rabid dog animatronic levels of hate. Like, for instance, this comment, and I'll read it exactly as written to stay true to his authorial intent. Quote, as a hard-care FNAF fan, he's a embracement to FNAF tourists. He insists on using the box to proof his stupid stories, and they don't even make sense. He sucks and thinks he's smart, but he's not. I wish he would stoop. He then goes on to rant for a paragraph about how unrealistic time travel is in a franchise about robot rabbits haunted by ghost metal, but I think you get the point. And though I use this one really over-the-top extreme comment as an example, seeing stuff like this is a bummer, because I don't know if you can tell, but I really do like this franchise, and I see my role in it as a person just connecting ideas or presenting new threads to consider in a franchise that at this point is massive and really confusing. But his comment does bring up something that I should probably address at the top of this episode since it'll be relevant for today. My use of the, how did he put it? The box to proof my theories. Here's the thing, friends. I think this is something that both sides could use as a reminder, both my FNAF theory followers and my FNAF theory haters. There is a difference between canonicity and continuity, and I think a lot of the times in these sorts of discussions, they get confused with each other. Something being listed as canon just means that it's official. It is blessed by the person who is overseeing the rules of the universe. It is self-consistent within the boundaries of that fictional world. On the other hand, a continuity, at least as I'm referring to it here, is a timeline of events, a continuous story thread where one event leads to the next that leads to the next. Take Star Wars as an example. Rey having magic healing powers in Rise of Skywalker, or Leia flying around like Mary Poppins in The Last Jedi. Because they're appearing in official works of the franchise, those powers thereby get the green light as being canonical powers of the Force in the overall Star Wars universe. The problems people have with them, though, is that they don't fit in cleanly with the continuity that was previously established. If Force healing is in fact a thing, then why hasn't it been used to save literally anyone before this point in the series? Tell you what, it would have been really handy for old Qui-Gon Jinn over there in episode 1, but the fact remains, healing is now a canonical Force power, which means that the canonicity of certain powers is presenting challenges to the established continuity of events that came before. Now, this is where FNAF comes in. You see, you can have multiple continuities all existing under the same canon, and it appears as though this is how the FNAF franchise is working. The original novels and the original games exist in an alternate universe from one another. They are separate continuities, and yet they are all deemed canon. This was all expressly stated by Scott years ago. Quote, so yes, the book is canon, just as the games are. That doesn't mean that they are intended to fit together like two puzzle pieces. The book is a reimagining of the Five Nights at Freddy's story, and if you go into it with that mindset, I think you'll really enjoy it. End quote. Now, what I've been trying to do with my theories, and what I think some people on both sides misunderstand, is that I'm not trying to use the books to solve a continuity. I'm trying to use the books to establish a canon that will then allow us to solve a continuity. The books present us with themes, concepts, characters, and motivations in one continuity that can then inform our understanding of a separate continuity, or at the very least give us questions that we can ask of that continuity. Charlie being a robot in the books tells us that in the canon of the Five Nights world, passable humanoid robots can actually be a thing. So are there any characters in the games who this may or may not apply to? I don't know, but it's a question that we owe it to ourselves to ask because it's been established to be canon within this franchise. Do we know what these little pins are on Baby's design here in the game? No idea. In fact, most people probably didn't even remember that they existed in the first place. But in the books, they play an important role. These are the things that allow Baby to transform into a human disguise. Now, is that necessarily what they're doing in the game? No, definitely not. Is the best and likely only clue for what they really are coming from a separate continuity? Yeah, in this case, yes it is. This isn't us trying to shove puzzle pieces together like Scott warned us against. It's about seeing that in one puzzle, there's a piece that fits in a certain location, and in a separate puzzle, you have a similar piece that might end up acting in a similar way. And here's the thing, you don't have to take my word on any of this anymore. Scott recently made a new post about all of this to clarify the situation. In response to the question of whether the lore of FNAF is solvable, he said this: "All I can do is say that some questions will be answered, even if it may not always be the answer you wanted. Be patient." Let me at least say this: future games will look forward, but look to the novels to fill in some of the blanks to the past. So there you have it, from the creator himself. Does including the books in our discussions make things messy and complicated? Sure, but remember what franchise we're talking about here, friends. Messy and complicated is like the formal first name that Five Nights at Freddy's never uses. Call it McFNAF. Messy, complicated Five Nights at Freddy's. The long and short of it is that when it comes to this franchise, we as theorists have always had to be discerning over what clues are helpful and which ones are just red herrings. This is no different now. Back when we only had the games, we did it with the number of Foxy Toes and Freddy buttons. Did a missing button mean it was a new animatronic? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Now we just have to do it with time-traveling ball pits and sound illusion discs. And here's the last thing I'm gonna say on the issue, and hopefully it's the last time that I have to talk about it. At this point, where there's soon to be more books than there are games in this franchise, take a minute to wrap your head around that one. To dismiss the books entirely at this point is just short-sighted. And I'm not just saying that because we're referenced in the new book, Fetch. Yeah, seriously, we're in it. From page, well, I read it on digital, so it's like page 250 out of 3,127. Quote, "Greg did tune back in, though, when Kimberly Bergstrom raised her hand. Well, he sort of tuned back in. He heard her question, 'Is this just a theory?' She probably didn't actually say it that way. That was just my creative interpretation of that line. Look, Ma, I'm an inside joke hidden inside the second installment of a multi-volume scholastic book series. I've made it." Anyway, meta discussion over. Let's talk about this new book and what it means for the franchise, shall we? Fazbear Frights #2 Fetch was recently released, and it is, well, if I'm being honest, it feels much less connected to the series than the first one. Don't get me wrong, the stories are still really good, if not even darker than the original three. I mean, one has a young girl outright being mauled to death and wrapped in a sheet while she lays there dying, so pretty intense stuff. But the connections to the main lore are definitely a bit shakier this time around. I mean, the first book, Into the Pit, featured cameo performances by Golden Bonnie, Baby, Funtime Freddy, The Missing Children's Choir, and more. This one, meanwhile, introduces us to a lot of new things. A smartphone-powered animatronic dog named